Hi, my name's Fawnde. Welcome to the 7th DM Diary of the Throne of Rihdar. Today, there's a few things I want to talk about. It should ideally be a shorter one, but the first thing I want to talk about is my players have reached level 2. Now, something I just talked with my players about. Number one, I think it's always important to talk to your players and make sure they agree with anything you're going to do. But I'd ask them, what do you think about this idea? You need to earn your level ups. Pardon me. You need to earn your level ups. So whenever you reach level 2, if you have a perk that you don't deserve yet, then you don't get it. And you need to work in certain ways to get these perks. For example, let's say one of my wizards wants a Witch Bolt. So they should start practicing using lightning or combining lightning with their spells and such to be able to unlock Witch Bolt. I don't wish to make it very difficult for them, but to some extent I want it to be a bit of a challenge. So half my players are, well, basically all my players are level 2, but they're more like level 1.5 for the most part, which they don't really mind, but that's where they're at. And now they have finished all of their stuff in the Maplewood Marshes. They have got their Witch's Blessing from Aldania, and now they're ready to finally go to a town, to Maplewood. It's been nearly 2 weeks since they first left Maplewood, and it's about to be the first time they'll get back, but they still have to travel there. So they quickly say their goodbyes. They say goodbye to Aldania, goodbye to Serapa. Serapa actually has given his comb to Stavros in exchange for a promise that Stavros will eventually take him to a human barber shop one day. And at the same time when he's talking, mostly Kit and Newt and Kira kind of realize that perhaps the secret they believe Serapa has been hiding might be related to the fact that he might potentially have the moldening, but they're not sure. But they say goodbye to him. They leave and say goodbye to Tiny Plant as well, who actually, whenever they're leaving, manages to write the words bye in her vines. She can't speak, but she manages to write them. And this is almost confirmation that the teachings Stavros has been doing with her every night, reading her books and trying to teach her words, seems to be working to some extent. But before they leave, Aldania and Newt come to an agreement for Newt to give Aldania his papers over Terrigenesis, an ancient technique of science that has been lost to time. Now, he is at first kind of unwilling, but then he gives it to her and writes a copy for himself, and she's very happy, and they leave out. And they leave Aldania's Grove with the expectation to come back after they reach Port Crevice. Now, they start to leave, and they're traveling through the swamps pretty easily. With the Witch's Blessing, which has given them a lot of abilities and a lot of strength, they are no longer able to get lost in the Maplewood Marshes. As little spirits guide their way, they pretty easily travel through. Not much happens in the first day. They're looking for plants and things of the such, and they eventually find a weird bush that has these greenish berries on there. And with a few checks, they realize this is a poison pop bush. These berries are called poison pops for a very particular reason, and as per the name says, they're very poisonous. Basically, they're berries that explode and create a toxin around them. Poison pops. They're very fragile. However, the party decides they would like to get some. So they devise a plan on how to collect these without accidentally making one pop and setting off a chain reaction, creating the entire bush to pop and create this huge, toxic, poisonous gas around them. You see, poison pops aren't just poisonous. The reason they're so deadly is because they are poison that lasts for a very, very long time. It doesn't kill you right away. It doesn't just instantly murder you, and that's not why it's deadly. It's deadly because if you're poisoned by them, you'll be poisoned for an extremely long time, and it's very hard to get rid of this poison. But they devise a plan. They're going to put blankets under this bush, and they're going to have Kit use a mage hand and try to cut some of them off with a knife. And with some dexterity checks, they actually manage. But they don't get too greedy. They only collect 3 of them, and they grab them, and they end up putting them in a glass vial, and they store them. This had taken them a decent amount of time to do and to let, but they'd managed. So now they have quite a few poisonous berries on their hand for whatever they decide to use them for, as they continue to travel on, until it gets to nighttime and they decide to set up camp. They set up camp. Stavros goes off to the side and sets up a hunting trap to ideally catch some food, and they all just kind of talk for a little bit. They do a lot of roleplay, and I'm very grateful for my players. My players love doing roleplay, and I love seeing it. This is one of those moments where you let the players roleplay and you don't interrupt them, where they just start talking and they keep doing stuff and keep roleplaying, and all they were doing is traveling to the town. I'm not in a rush to get them anywhere. It is completely up to them to how much time they spend. And it's always really nice to watch when my players decide we would like to roleplay. If it's important, meaningless, that's what it's about. One of my players, Un, who plays Newt, oftentimes whenever he speaks about my game, he does in fact say he likes my game, which makes me extremely happy. But the way he explains my game is like this. It's like I'm reading a story. It's like he's playing, but he's having a story read to him almost. Like he's involved in a story that's going down, which I appreciate the compliment. But whenever I hear that, I don't completely enjoy it. You see, I understand why he says it, but I want my game to be like I'm reading them a story. I want it to be like that because it's serious, and I like creating moments where I do a lot of description. But I want it to be a story that I'm not reading to them, a story that they're helping create, and I'm reading what they're creating, more or less. But it's not completely like that, and I understand why. But I still appreciate the compliment, but that is one of the things I feel I need to work on. Maybe. And it's very strange because he still says that. Even though my last few sessions I've ran have not had any they've had preparation, but I've not made an outline for them. So basically they've been all improv. He still says that. So to some extent, I don't understand. I know it's not a bad thing, but I'm not actually really railroading them at this point because I have things prepared, but I don't have them outlined. I don't have an order they go in. But who knows? I'll figure it out. But through the night, they're role-playing and talking, and Shmeeb, who plays Stavros, sneaks off to try and get some of his powers as a paladin for level 2. He's currently lacking his spellcasting ability, and he's lacking his divine smite. So firstly, he speaks to the Reens, Galatea, and Pygmalion, who are the two Reens that have replaced the moon that circle around Orbitus, the planet. So he speaks to them, and they tell him more or less to go to a church and repent, and then he may get his powers. So then he speaks to his evil patron, Bled Mahog. Bled Mahog. Bled Mahog. Bled Mahog. He speaks to him and he makes a deal. He will have to do one thing for him without any questions asked, as long as it is not hurting his friends. And he will have to start serving him, in return to get the power from him. And the reason Bled Mahog agrees to this is because he is intrigued that he would give away Caradoc, the Ash Fallen, the spirit of a fallen paladin who's stuck in that cursed armor he had given away. He's very intrigued. He's somewhat annoyed that he had just let his prisoner go loose, but he's very intrigued that he so easily did that. So he grants him this power. And Kira, who is the second one on watch at this time, kind of notices some weird stuff's happening, but she doesn't seem to question. Almost as if she knows everyone has their secrets, and it's better not to inquire at times. As the night goes on, the two of them end their shift, and then the shift changes. And the ones who wake up are Hawkins and Kit, and they begin to speak about the Dreamwalker. Now, this is something I have not talked much about, because most of the times I've done this have been out of session, so when I do these recaps, it doesn't make much sense to bring them up. But something I've been doing out of session, especially when my players are gone, I make them join a call, and we roleplay by ourselves for a few minutes, and every time it's them in a dream. And then they meet this person named the Dreamwalker, a very strange, monstrous, devilish-looking creature who walks through people's dreams and tries to make deals to eat their dreams and give them. He'll eat your nightmares and give you good dreams, or he'll eat one of your not so good dreams and then give you anything you want in a dream. And he's been talking to my players one by one. It started with Kit, then it went to Hawkins, and then the session prior, it happened to Newt as he had overslept. So now you have 3 people with these, and I was planning on getting all of them to have one before that anyone brought it up. But in game, Kit had brought it up to me, which then alerted Hawkins and Newt out of character, kind of meta, but it's fine. I'm not very much of a stickler on that. It kind of alerted them. And so they begin to talk during the night, Hawkins and Kit, about this, and they realize that they both have one of these coins. The coin is given to one who rejects the offer, or one who does not get a gift. And Hawkins, who's played by Swills, it's funny because he said, "Oh, I guess I'm not that special then, huh? It seems everyone has one of these," which I thought was really funny because he thought he was very special, when in reality everyone has one. But they start talking, and then I let Newt wake up. So the 3 of them start talking about how they all have one of these dream coins, how they've all met the Dream Walker, how they've all had this encounter. And they start talking about the possibilities of potentially all flipping the coin to talk to him at the same time. And then they make the joke, perhaps we can have a dream orgy, which is very strange. But none of them do this, and they talk. And then during the night, they see something approaching them in the darkness. On alert, they decide to pay attention. And they quickly realize it's a couple Frogolians led by Sir Todevelt in his shining armor that looks like a toad as he approaches, and a couple other Frogolians, about 3 of them, approaches their camp, and they're carrying 2 goblins, who they can quickly tell are probably going to be sacrifices to the giant crocodile, Mother Devorator. And as they get closer, they stop them, and they're on good terms, so they can't really understand him, as Sir Todevelt is one of the Frogolians who did not speak common, so they have no way to properly communicate. And they wake everyone up, and they all get up. And then they remember, oh, we actually have a recipe from a book on how to cook a goblin. And they've been wanting to try and cook a goblin for a while. So now there's some goblins here. So they're trying to convince Sir Todevelt to let them have a goblin to cook. But he doesn't speak goblin, so they sit there for a long time trying to play charades, until eventually it looks like he's trying to cook Newt, because it's not going well, and they cannot communicate properly to him. And we sit here for a while. It was hilarious. It was really fun to do. I really enjoyed just doing stupid roleplay, where it's not stupid in the sense of Looney Tunes, but it's kind of just silly, and kind of like, oh, well, this is kind of humorous. Nothing that is just ridiculous, but makes sense and is very humorous in the moment. Eventually, they do not make an agreement on this, as no one understands what the hell's going on. They finally give up after like 15, 20, 30 minutes of real session time trying to convince this guy. And they let them stay there, and he sleeps in Newt's tent as the watch continues. As one of the slaves tries to escape, but Newt stops him. And as they move on and on, the morning approaches, and they realize in their trap they've actually caught something. A leechadile. It is a weird combination of like an alligator or a crocodile with the mouth and face of a leech. It's a very nasty thing, but it is something that is found in swamps and the Maplewood marshes. And then this brings up a whole nother problem of how they're desperately trying to hide this from allowing the Frogolians to notice that they've caught this, in case they have some weird hatred to them for killing something that slightly resembles a crocodile. And they're desperately trying to figure out how to distract the Frogolians. And then the Frogolians just leave. They literally just leave, showing the players that it was not in vain, but like it was totally out of reason, as they weren't interested. And they just leave, and they go on carrying the slaves to be sacrificed. The players wake up, they cut up this leechadon, they eat it, and it's pretty good. And they taught some more. They do more roleplay. This session was basically just a whole lot of roleplay, until eventually they start walking in, and they get to a place where they see the Maplewood town. But before this, they had decided to be silly and throw Kit across a giant river to avoid him getting wet. But it didn't go well, and he ended up massively injuring himself, almost killing him actually, which was crazy. He almost dies, but he's fine. as they continue on and they get to the town, and then they get to the gates. But before they get to the gates, they decided to try and hide the collars from when they got muzzled by a spark from the Twilight Redemption and Kronos Ashamed. They wrap around these nasty cloths around their collars, and they hide, and they manage to more or less deceive everyone and the guards at this gate. But as they approach, they meet these 3 guards, and one of them recognizes Newt. His name's Luke. He actually knew Newt from his backstory very briefly, and they're kind of getting along talking, but they can't get through properly. It turns out that one of the guards there, named Ronald, has orders to bring them in. One of the hired men from whenever they first fought those bandits at the start of the game, that they were following from their backstory whenever they were still part of the Hidden Pact, or the Hidden Chain. They had came to town and reported that this group had murdered all their friends, so they were wanted for an interrogation. Now, the players wanting to avoid this, as Kit was very injured, Hawkins decides to show his Blossom Badge. If I've not explained before, a Blossom Badge is something that's only given to the highest of important government officials and important people of Kradoy. So it is basically, whenever you show this badge, it means you have free passage. You are an extremely important official person when you have one of these. So he shows his badge, and quickly the attitude changes, and they let them in. However, it is a high crime to have one of these if you don't deserve it, which the players have rightfully been given them, but whenever anyone looks at them, they are, for the most part, a bunch of non-humans, and Kradoy is extremely racist, extremely human-centric. So he warns this, but Ronald changes his attitude and says, fine, I will lead you to Joseph Flume, the captain of the guards. You can talk to him, and he apologizes for his rude behavior, and he lets them into town, and they begin to walk into town, and that's more or less where our session ends, when they had finally approached the Maplewood town. For the first time in 2 weeks, they're finally in a human settlement. Now, not much will happen. This entire session went on about the same time, but it was just so much roleplay. There wasn't much to talk about. Besides, I extremely enjoyed what they'd done. Anyway, we can talk more about it in the next DM Diary. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Fawnde. This was the 7th DM Diary of the Throne of Rihdar. Thank you to my players for playing. Thank you to my viewers for watching. And I hope this continues to be as fun as it has been so far. And I hope all of you enjoy it. And perhaps it inspires some of you to start DMing yourself. I hope. Anyway, goodbye. I'll see you next time. Take care of yourself.